Flight attendant denies man a seat, finds out he's the airline's new owner. Welcome to a captivating story about pride, humility, and the unforeseen consequences of a single snap judgment. This tale unfolds at John F. Kennedy International Airport, where a flight attendant, burdened by personal stress and professional pressures, denies a seemingly ordinary passenger the seat he rightfully deserves. Unbeknownst to her, he's far more than meets the eye. He's the airline's newly minted owner. As the journey takes off, twists and turns unravel amid the clouds, and an immediate dose of karma collides with ambition and impatience. Brace yourself for drama, surprise revelations, and a stark reminder that first impressions can be powerfully deceptive. Before we dive in, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. If you're excited about this story, let us know. If you enjoyed the video, press 1. If not, press O. Your feedback really inspires me to gather more uplifting and meaningful stories. The day began at John F. Kennedy International Airport with a typical hustle of bleary-eyed travelers, dragging suitcases, scanning departure boards, and navigating security checkpoints. It was barely 5:00 a.m., yet the terminal buzzed with the frenetic energy of thousands converging for red-eye and early morning flights. Flight attendant Danielle Brooks stood at gate 12 sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. She attempted to tame her anxious mind, but the day had begun poorly. After oversleeping thanks to a faulty phone charger, she'd arrived with only moments to spare for the mandatory pre-flight briefing. Stress tightened her chest. As she surveyed the crowd forming by the gate, she reminded herself to stay calm and professional. Danielle had served American Airlines for 6 years, but recent personal issues, a messy breakup, her sick father in another state, and financial worries had worn her patience thin. She forced a polite smile for boarding passengers. The flight was bound for Los Angeles, and from the passenger manifest, it was nearly full. She pictured the 4.5-hour journey ahead, dreading the myriad requests for seat changes, overhead bin space, and complicated meal orders. She was the assigned lead for business class cabins that day, which usually meant fewer people to serve but higher expectations from travelers. As she stood at the jet bridge entrance, scanning boarding passes with the gate agent, a sense of foreboding nagged at her. She tried to dismiss it. Just get everyone on board, handle the in-flight service, and land without drama, she told herself. Little did she know that fate had already arranged a far more turbulent path. Moments before passengers officially boarded, Danielle's manager, Felicia Grant, summoned her and the rest of the cabin crew for a quick huddle near the counter. They circled around, 2 junior flight attendants, an off-duty pilot hitching a ride, and the first officer. Captain Harris was still in the cockpit, finalizing logs. The meeting was swift. Felicia highlighted that the flight was at capacity, business class had multiple high-value customers, and the airline was testing new in-flight service protocols for premium cabins. Felicia also reminded them about ongoing rumors. American Airlines was rumored to be under negotiation for a partial takeover or major investment from an unnamed mogul. The scuttlebutt among employees was that the airline's CEO had been courting new shareholders to keep the carrier competitive. Though no one had official details, the possibility rattled some staff who feared sweeping changes. Danielle, however, was too preoccupied with her personal life to dwell on corporate intrigue. Once the briefing ended, Danielle and the others took their stations. She patrolled the aircraft's business class seats, verifying that pillows and blankets were neatly folded, entertainment systems functioned, and overhead compartments were ready. The flow of incoming passengers soon demanded her attention. Wealthy executives, a smattering of celebrities, and loyal, frequent flyers made their way in. Danielle plastered on her best greeting smile, even as an early headache pulsed behind her temple. Boarding was well underway when a man with unkempt salt and pepper hair, modest attire, and a slightly rumpled jacket stepped onto the jet bridge. He clutched a small carry-on and a tablet. Danielle noticed him out of the corner of her eye, but initially paid little attention. He looked more like an economy flyer than a business-class customer, especially compared to the well-tailored suits strolling in with gold frequent flyer tags. She resumed checking in a pair of travelers who were running late. They asked for an overhead bin near their seats, and Danielle politely directed them. But a moment later, she heard the gate agent say, "Sir, your boarding pass seems incorrect for business class. Are you sure you're assigned seat 4A? The agent's tone was puzzled. The grey-haired man responded politely, "I'm quite certain I was told 4A. There might be some confusion." His voice was calm, though Danielle detected a note of quiet authority beneath the mildness. Danielle, half listening, moved closer. The gate agent, rifling through the system, finally shrugged and handed the pass back to the man. "I can't find you on the upgrade list. Maybe check with the flight attendant." Approaching, Danielle placed a hand on the man's boarding pass. "Good morning," she said. "Let me see if I can clear things up." She quickly scanned the pass. It showed seat 4A in business class, but the name Michael Sutton didn't appear on her passenger manifest for that section. Instead, it listed someone else assigned to 4A. She frowned. "Sir," she began, "I'm showing seat 4A belongs to Mr. Delgado. Are you sure you booked business class?" Michael offered a polite smile. "I was assured I'd have a seat in business. My travel coordinator arranged it. Could there be a glitch in the system?" "Possibly," Danielle said. Her fatigue and frustration flared. She had no time for system glitches with a full flight. She glanced at the quickly forming line behind him. "Let me check with the gate agent once more." She gestured for him to step aside so other passengers could pass. The clock ticked. The last boarding calls echoed over the intercom. The gate agent double-checked the main passenger list, confirming seat 4A was assigned to Delgado. As for Michael Sutton, the database only showed an economy seat, 23C. With minutes left to finalize the flight, Danielle marched back to Michael. He stood calmly, carry-on at his side, not flustered like typical travelers in seat disputes. "I'm sorry," she said. "The manifest indicates you're in seat 23C, not 4A. We're fully booked in business, so there's no way to move you up. You'll have to take seat 23C if you want to fly." Michael studied her expression. "There must be a mistake, miss." He checked her name badge. "Miss Brooks. My assistant made it clear I'd be flying in business class. Could you please recheck?" Stifling annoyance, Danielle gave him a tense smile. "Sir, we've rechecked. There is no seat open in business. If you'd like to board, you need to use seat 23C. Michael paused. A flicker of disappointment crossed his face. He inhaled as though ready to argue, but then exhaled, nodding. "All right, perhaps I can resolve this in flight. If not, I'll contact the airline afterward." He gave a small shrug. "It's not your fault, Miss Brooks." She blinked, taken aback by his composure. Most passengers in such a predicament grew angry or confrontational. Yet something about his gaze, calm yet probing, unsettled her. She quickly dismissed the thought. "He's just another mis-ticketed passenger." "Thank you for understanding," she said, stepping aside to let him pass. "Seat 23C is in the economy cabin, near the wing." By the time the door closed, Danielle was exhausted from boarding chaos. The flight pushed back from the gate. Captain Harris's voice welcomed everyone, citing a flight time of 4 hours and 30 minutes to Los Angeles. Danielle and her fellow attendants performed the safety demonstration. Once airborne, Danielle readied the business class meal service. She had fancy plated breakfasts to distribute. A flurry of tasks kept her busy handing out hot towels, offering beverage choices, serving warm pastries. At the same time, she kept half an ear on the passenger call chimes from economy, which were frequent. 20 minutes into the flight, while distributing coffee in business class, Danielle heard repeated chimes from row 23. She recognized Michael's seat number from earlier. She sighed. Great, a problem passenger. Perhaps he wanted to push for a seat change again. She mentally braced herself and walked to the economy cabin. Immediately, a row of irritated faces greeted her. A mother with 2 children asked for pillows. A young man demanded an alternate meal. In the midst of it sat Michael Sutton, quietly waiting. She nearly moved on, but his call light was indeed lit. Approaching, she asked, "Yes, sir." Michael spoke softly. "I was wondering if there was any chance to buy an in-flight upgrade. I'd like more legroom. My assistant told me it was included in my ticket." Clutching the coffee pot, Danielle felt her frustration spike. "I told you earlier, we're sold out up there." She tried to keep her voice low. "No upgrades are available, paid or otherwise." His eyes flicked around. Nearby passengers listened. "All right, I understand. Sorry to bother you," he murmured, though disappointment laced his tone. As she turned to go, the plane lurched. Turbulence rocked the cabin. Danielle lost her balance, and the coffee pot tilted precariously. Hot coffee splashed across her uniform sleeve, scalding her arm. She hissed in pain, nearly dropping the pot, coffee raining onto the aisle floor. Shocked gasps erupted. Michael immediately stood, grabbing napkins from the seat back pocket to help. "Are you okay?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. Face burning, arm stinging, Danielle nodded stiffly. "I'm fine," she managed through clenched teeth. An immediate wave of humiliation and pain coursed through her. The coffee burn was mild, but stung fiercely. She shot a quick glance at Michael, who was holding out napkins. She felt a wave of guilt. "He's helping me, and I was so curt with him." She snatched the napkins, muttered a thank you, and hurried to the galley, feeling an odd sense of shame and frustration. Perhaps this was the day's immediate karma for her dismissive attitude. The turbulence passed after a few bumpy minutes. Danielle changed into a spare blouse stored in her crew bag and treated the light burn on her forearm with cool water. The senior attendant, Patricia, gently checked on her. "You sure you're all right, Danielle? That looked painful." Danielle forced a smile. "I'll be fine. Just a scald. Thanks for covering the cart." Patricia nodded and left. As Danielle re-emerged, she caught a snippet of conversation between 2 off-duty flight attendants traveling in economy. They whispered about a major corporate shift happening soon. Something about a new investor buying a controlling stake in American Airlines. "Apparently the deal just closed," one said. "We might have a brand new boss next quarter." Danielle frowned, half listening. She shook off the chatter. The rumor mill had been churning for months, but no official announcement had come. She had bigger concerns, finishing her service without any more mishaps. Returning to business class, she resumed distributing meals and drinks. A high-status passenger complained that his omelette was cold. Another wanted extra lemon for tea. She handled each request with forced courtesy. Yet an unease gnawed at her. The memory of her hasty dismissal of Michael Sutton weighed on her mind, particularly after he tried to assist her with the spilled coffee. She tried to push it aside, focusing on tasks. But every so often, she glimpsed row 23, noticing Michael reading on his tablet or quietly sipping water. Midway through the flight, Danielle was summoned to the cockpit via interphone. Captain Harris requested a coffee refill and wanted an update on the cabin. She prepared 2 cups on a tray and knocked on the cockpit door. Stepping in carefully, she delivered the coffees. Captain Harris, a genial man in his late 40s, smiled in thanks. The first officer also nodded, "Hello." "Busy flight?" Harris asked. Danielle sighed lightly. "It's full, so that's normal. We had a minor seat miscommunication earlier, but it sorted. She flexed her sore arm absent-mindedly, recalling the coffee spill. "Everything else all right?" he pressed. She gave a small nod. "Yes, sir." She hesitated, then added, "We have a passenger who believed he was booked in business, but had a seat in economy. He's been polite, but it's unusual. Usually people cause a scene. He's calm." Harris shrugged. "Maybe a booking error. Corporate's changing so many systems recently. Keep an eye on it. Let me know if it escalates." She nodded, deciding not to elaborate. She retreated to the cabin, not wanting to tie up the flight deck with trivial details. Still, an odd tension simmered in her gut. Hours passed with relative calm. The hustle of meal service wound down. Some passengers dozed, the cabin lights dimmed. Danielle took a moment to catch her breath at the back galley, sipping water to soothe her frayed nerves. She overheard quiet laughter near row 23, where Michael was conversing with the off-duty pilot hitching a ride, Ben Parker. They seemed engaged in an animated discussion. Curiosity piqued. Danielle edged closer, pretending to rearrange a supply cart. She caught snippets of conversation. "Michael, yes, I've been looking into the company's structure. There's a lot of potential if guided properly." "Ben, no kidding. I guess with all the changes, some folks are anxious. But hopefully, new leadership can stabilize things." Danielle furrowed her brow. She recognized the context: American Airlines rumored new ownership. But was Michael just a business analyst, or was there more to his interest? The conversation's tone suggested familiarity with high-level corporate details. She forced herself to step away, feeling vaguely uneasy. He's got an interest in the airline's leadership. Maybe he's just a financial consultant, she reasoned. Yet a persistent thought nagged. He's not some random passenger. He carries himself with quiet confidence. She tried to dismiss the speculation, but it clung to her mind. The captain announced their initial descent into Los Angeles. Flight attendants prepared the cabin, collecting trash, ensuring seat belts were fastened. Tray tables up. Danielle made one last pass through business class, verifying overhead bins were secure. Then she moved on to economy, scanning for compliance. Reaching row 23, she noticed Michael leaning forward, rummaging in his carry-on. Something about his posture suggested mild impatience, as if he anticipated something important upon landing. Danielle recalled his calm demeanor and felt a pang of guilt for how she'd treated him. He never complained loudly or demanded compensation, she thought. He tried to help me with the coffee spill. A small voice urged her to offer an apology, or at least a friendly word, but time was short. The seatbelt sign shone overhead. Everyone needed to be seated for landing. She simply nodded to him, saying, "We'll be landing soon. Please stow your items." He complied, giving her a slight, almost gentle smile. Moments later, a jolt of turbulence shook the plane. Captain Harris's voice came over the PA. "Folks, we have some crosswinds at LAX. Please remain seated and strapped in. We should be on the ground in 15 minutes. The approach turned bumpy, with pockets of air jostling the aircraft. Danielle clutched a jump seat handle, heart pounding at each dip. She glanced at the passengers, many gripping armrests anxiously. Yet Michael Sutton appeared composed, eyes steady out the window. He's either a seasoned traveler or unbelievably calm under stress, Danielle mused. At last, the Boeing 737 touched down with a firm thud on the runway, rolling to a gradual stop. Applause erupted from a few relieved flyers. As they taxied toward the gate, Danielle breathed a sigh of relief. No major drama, aside from that seat mishap. She stood ready by the front, preparing to say farewells. When the plane parked and the door opened, passengers slowly stood, collecting bags from overhead bins. Danielle thanked each business-class traveler as they passed. Meanwhile, in economy, people queued in the aisle. She glimpsed Michael Sutton step from row 23, carry-on in hand, a thoughtful expression on his face. Just then, Felicia Grant, her manager, rushed onto the plane from the jet bridge, eyes scanning the cabin. She wore an urgent look. Spying Michael near the back, she called out, "Mr. Sutton, welcome to Los Angeles, sir. I'm Felicia, a ground operations manager for American. We weren't sure which seat you were in. May I guide you to the VIP lounge?" A hush fell over the immediate area. Danielle's head jerked up at Felicia's mention of VIP lounge. She saw Felicia approach. Michael, greeting him with the same deference usually reserved for top-level executives. The passengers parted, confused but curious. Michael nodded graciously to Felicia. "Appreciate it. I'll head there after I gather some details." Felicia turned, scanning for the flight crew. Her gaze locked on Danielle, tension swirling in her expression. "Miss Brooks, I need a word with you," she said. Heat raced up Danielle's neck. "What is going on?" She stepped forward, trying to remain composed. Felicia gestured for Michael to come closer. Then, in a low voice, she said, "Danielle, meet Mr. Michael Sutton. He's effectively our new principal owner. The investment deal closed yesterday, and Mr. Sutton now holds a controlling stake in American Airlines." Shock slammed into Danielle like a physical force. She stared at Michael, recollecting every brusque word, every time she denied him business class, labeling him a mis-ticketed passenger. She opened her mouth, but no words formed. "He's the new owner?" Michael gave a gentle shrug. "We had a small seat mix-up," he explained softly, addressing Felicia. "Nothing major, though I was told I'd have seat 4A. Perhaps a system glitch." Felicia's jaw tensed. "We'll investigate, sir. Of course. We deeply apologize for any inconvenience. Danielle, would you like to explain?" All eyes seemed to focus on Danielle. Her mind raced. She recalled dismissing him repeatedly, scalding her arm with coffee in front of him, never once suspecting he was more than a typical passenger. Embarrassment mingled with dread. I had no idea," she began, voice trembling. "The manifest showed another passenger in 4A. We were full, so I insisted Mr. Sutton remain in economy. I'm sorry for the confusion. If I'd known," she stopped, realizing how bad that sounded. "If I'd known you were the boss, I'd have treated you better." It was the worst admission of bias. Michael offered a forgiving smile. "I'm sure you followed procedure. Perhaps we'll rectify the booking software. Let's not blame Miss Brooks entirely." He turned to Felicia. "I'd like to chat with the relevant department about the glitch. No need to penalize anyone. Mistakes happen." Relief and guilt warred in Danielle's chest. He was letting her off. She parted her lips to thank him, but Felicia's expression remained stern. "Yes, Mr. Sutton. We will definitely do an internal review. Meanwhile, your car is waiting if you'd like to proceed to the lounge." Michael nodded, hoisting his carry-on. Then, glancing at Danielle's bandaged forearm, he asked quietly, "How's your burn from the coffee spill?" "I hope it's not serious." Danielle's cheeks flamed. "Just a minor scald, sir. Thank you for asking." He gave her a nod, then said something that nearly made her heart skip. "Please let me know if the airline can help with medical costs or anything. I value the well-being of our staff." The generosity in his tone almost made Danielle tear up. She stammered out a thank you. "I appreciate that," as Felicia guided him to the exit. The cabin thrummed with conversation among the few remaining passengers who'd overheard. Danielle felt as if the floor might drop from under her. "He's so gracious. Even though I effectively turned him away from the seat he was entitled to, this was instant, humbling karma." Once the plane emptied, Danielle followed Felicia onto the jet bridge, where they stood in tense silence. Felicia asked, "Danielle, how bad was this seat incident? Did you dismiss him rudely? Or was it just protocol?" Danielle inhaled shakily. "He came in with a pass for 4A, but the system said it belonged to someone else. I told him he had an economy seat. I wasn't outright rude, but I was definitely brusque. And, well, my stress level was high." Felicia pressed her lips into a line. Given he's now the controlling investor, this could be big. However, he seems understanding. He didn't want you punished. But corporate will ask questions. Write up a statement by day's end. Danielle's shoulders slumped. I understand. I'll do it. She dreaded the impending bureaucracy reports, phone calls, possibly a formal warning. Felicia softened. He's an unusual figure. I read some background. He's known to dress simply, refusing to rely on status. So don't beat yourself up too hard. Then, patting Danielle's shoulder, she added, Get some rest. I'll forward details once I know more. In the days that followed, rumors spread like wildfire. American Airlines had indeed completed a massive investment deal with Michael Sutton, a low-profile entrepreneur who specialized in turning around large corporations. He possessed a reputation for personally investigating company operations, sometimes incognito. Word of the seat denial story circulated among staff, though no official press release addressed it. Among colleagues, Danielle's experience became a cautionary tale. Always treat every passenger with respect, because you never know who they might be. Meanwhile, Danielle submitted her statement, describing the events factually. She explained that the glitch showed another passenger assigned to 4A, so she gave Michael the only seat recognized in the system. She admitted her frustration at the time, but emphasized she'd followed official procedure. Human Resources scheduled a meeting to discuss best practices, reminding flight attendants to handle seat disputes with maximum courtesy and thoroughness. Despite the swirling gossip, Danielle felt fortunate that Michael Sutton hadn't demanded disciplinary action. He could have had me fired or demoted, she thought. Instead, he seemed more concerned with system upgrades than punishing staff. Even so, Danielle's guilt lingered. She replayed the moment she brushed him aside, the immediate coffee spill, and how he'd jumped to help. The memory stung her pride, but also taught her an unforgettable lesson in humility. About a week after the incident, Danielle returned to her typical routines, performing short-haul flights to neighboring states. She was still uneasy about the potential for career repercussions, but no final word had arrived. Then, one afternoon, an unexpected email popped into her inbox, an invitation from corporate, requesting her presence at a special staff meeting at the airline's headquarters in Dallas. The note was vague, mentioning a discussion about service improvements and leadership insights. It was set for the following Friday. Heart-thumping, Danielle tried to glean more info from Felicia, but the manager only said, I suspect it's related to Sutton's new policies. He's meeting with employees to get direct feedback. Maybe he specifically requested your input. The prospect both excited and terrified her. Why me? She feared being singled out as the flight attendant who'd unknowingly turned away the new boss. But another part of her was grateful for a chance to rectify the impression she'd left. She packed her uniform carefully, booked a flight to Dallas, and resolved to approach the meeting with honesty and humility. The following Friday, Danielle arrived at American Airlines' sleek corporate headquarters in Dallas. Nervous energy coursed through her as she rode the elevator to the 15th floor. Entering a large conference room, she found about 20 flight attendants, gate agents, and mid-level managers from various hubs. At the front stood none other than Michael Sutton, wearing a tailored blazer and open-collar shirt. He chatted with executives who listened intently. Danielle took a seat near the back, her mind swirling with questions. Michael eventually stepped forward, calling the meeting to order. He expressed gratitude for everyone's attendance and introduced himself as the new principal investor. His voice carried a calm authority, explaining his vision to modernize the airline systems, improve staff support, and enhance passenger experiences. He recounted how many legacy issues had created confusion, referencing seat misallocations specifically. At one point, Michael's gaze swept across the room, landing briefly on Danielle. She tensed. Did he recognize her? Perhaps. He didn't single her out, though. Instead, he invited open discussion about daily challenges and potential improvements. A gate agent spoke about outdated software, a manager about resource shortages, and a senior flight attendant about scheduling hardships. Danielle listened, noting how Michael offered thoughtful follow-up questions, taking notes on a tablet. When the floor opened for broader questions, Danielle mustered the courage to stand. Her palms damp, heart pounding. She introduced herself. I'm Danielle Brooks, based out of JFK, flight attendant for 6 years. Her voice trembled slightly. I encountered a seat confusion with you last week. I want to apologize formally for how I handled it. A ripple of interest swept the room. Michael looked at her calmly, recognition sparking in his eyes. He nodded for her to continue. It was a stressful flight, she said, forcing a steady tone. I let the system override any courtesy or double-checking I could have done. You ended up in the wrong seat as a result. I'm truly sorry. Michael's expression was kind. Thank you, Miss Brooks. I appreciate your honesty, and I apologize for any trouble the glitch caused you. This incident highlighted a gap in our booking process. That's what I'm determined to fix. She exhaled, relief flooding her. She'd braced for a rebuke, but he responded with empathy. The gathered employees seemed intrigued, leaning in to watch the exchange. Michael then used her story as an example of how a single software error could escalate if staff and systems weren't in sync. He stressed that no employee should have to shoulder blame alone when the core issue lay in outdated technology. The meeting continued with detailed discussions. Michael unveiled a plan to invest heavily in improved booking software, new training protocols, and more flexible passenger service guidelines. He emphasized compassion and thoroughness, giving flight attendants more autonomy to resolve seat disputes amicably. The room buzzed with cautious optimism. Some employees raised concerns about budget constraints, union negotiations, and morale, but Michael seemed prepared to address each point thoughtfully. When the gathering ended, people mingled. Danielle lingered, sipping coffee, her mind whirling. She half expected to slip out quietly, but Michael approached, his manner friendly. Danielle, thanks again for speaking up. I know it wasn't easy. She smiled, feeling her cheeks warm. I appreciate your understanding, sir. He waved off the formality. Please call me Michael. In fact, I wanted to personally let you know the final outcome. You won't face any disciplinary action regarding our seat mix-up. Her relief was palpable. That's a huge weight off my shoulders. She hesitated, then added, You were so calm during the flight. I truly had no idea who you were, he chuckled. I prefer traveling discreetly to see how real interactions unfold. No one should treat me differently just because of my title. Still, she said softly, I regret my tone. Michael patted her shoulder. Well, maybe it was meant to happen this way. It helped highlight a flaw in the system. That, in turn, could lead to better processes for everyone. Danielle nodded, gratitude shining in her eyes. What a remarkable turn of events, she thought, remembering how she dreaded his wrath. Before parting, Michael paused. Your service record shows strong performance. If you're open to it, I'd like your input on upcoming flight attendant training modules. The corporate team will be drafting new guidelines. Her eyes widened. Me? Why me? He offered a slight grin. Because you've experienced both sides, dealing with a system error and dealing with your own stress. That perspective is valuable. If you're interested, I can arrange a meeting with our training department. Danielle's heart fluttered. Absolutely. I'd be honored. She recognized the chance as a big break, a path to shaping airline policy, perhaps even advancing her career beyond standard flight attendant duties. The irony wasn't lost on her. The same man she'd refused a seat was now offering her an opportunity to shape the airline's future. Michael handed her a business card. "Email my assistant. We'll schedule a follow-up." She thanked him, resisting the urge to pinch herself. This was more than forgiveness. It was a chance to stand out in a sprawling airline. With a final nod, Michael stepped away, talking with other staff. Danielle tucked his card carefully into her pocket, marveling at the day's transformation. In the following weeks, Danielle resumed her normal flight schedule, yet she carried a new sense of purpose. She'd begun corresponding with the training department, drafting potential improvements for seat confirmation procedures, communication strategies, and conflict resolution tactics. She poured her experiences into constructive feedback, remembering her immediate karma with that spilled coffee, which underscored the vulnerability flight attendants face under stress. Fellow colleagues teased her about being the far who denied the new owner a seat, but mostly in good humor. The anecdote spread, but so did admiration for how she'd turned a near disaster into a positive outcome. Some flight attendants even asked her advice on dealing with complicated passenger interactions. Meanwhile, the airline's official press release announced Michael Sutton's new role. Media outlets covered the story of his incognito flights, praising his down-to-earth approach. The seat fiasco was never publicly mentioned by name, but Danielle recognized references to minor booking errors that revealed bigger system flaws. She felt a twinge of pride at being indirectly part of that narrative. A couple of months later, Danielle found herself once again on a flight from JFK to Los Angeles. This time, she was assigned to business class under a brand new policy. The system had advanced seat verification checks, reducing the chance of misassignments. The updated training included more flexible approaches to passenger concerns. She felt more empowered, prepared to handle unexpected issues with empathy and thoroughness. During boarding, a well-dressed older gentleman approached with a question about his seat. She smiled warmly, verifying his ticket with a handheld device that cross-referenced real-time data. No confusion. She guided him politely to 4A, coincidentally the same seat Michael Sutton had tried to claim before. Danielle let out a small chuckle at the memory, grateful for how far she'd come. The flight took off smoothly. As the fastened seatbelt sign dinged off, Danielle began the premium service. She felt calmer, more confident. Halfway through, the cockpit door opened, and to her astonishment, Michael Sutton stepped out, though not as a passenger. He wore a visitor's badge around his neck. Evidently, he was accompanying one of the airline's new operational tours. Spotting her, he flashed a grin. "Hey, Miss Brooks, mind if I check out how the new service protocols are working?" She beamed. "Of course. It's nice to see you, Michael." He chatted briefly with a couple of business-class passengers, gleaning feedback about seat comfort and service enhancements. Some recognized him from news coverage, others had no clue. Danielle watched him navigate the cabin with the same calm presence she remembered, bridging the gap between corporate leadership and frontline experience. Later, as the flight neared its end, he thanked her for letting him observe. The difference is noticeable. Fewer seat mishaps, staff are less stressed. He offered a handshake. "You and the team deserve credit." She accepted the handshake, a warm flush of pride. "We're just implementing the changes you initiated, but thank you." Michael nodded, stepping back toward the cockpit area with a final wave. Danielle gazed after him, marveling at the improbable chain of events that had transformed a humiliating seat denial into a relationship of mutual respect and collaboration. In that moment, she realized how drastically one chance encounter could shape her path. She denied a seemingly ordinary passenger his rightful seat, only to discover he was the new owner of American Airlines. The immediate karma of spilled coffee had sparked her reevaluation. Now, she was forging a better experience for passengers and staff alike, all thanks to the humility and humanity both she and Michael displayed after their rocky introduction. Thank you for joining us in this extraordinary journey of misjudgment, humility, and unexpected second chances. If you enjoyed this tale of a flight attendant who unknowingly turned away her future boss only to discover a golden opportunity for growth, please hit the like button and share the story with friends who appreciate life's twists. By subscribing to this channel, you'll stay up to date on more engaging narratives packed with drama, suspense, and timeless lessons about empathy. We value your support in spreading these captivating stories across the globe. Remember, be kind to everyone you meet because you never truly know who might be sitting right next to you at 30,000 feet. Safe travels.